Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and an introduction to my next project, the 1/35th scale Trumpeter Tiger 1 Late. So before I get going too far on this introduction to this next kit, I wanted to send out a special thanks to Jim Srenaski. He is the one who generously sent me this kit to build. I guess he got it along with another Tiger, and he asked me if I wanted to build it, and I said sure. So he sent it my way. So Jim, thanks a lot. And just as I told you, it's my next armor kit, so here we go. So first, I want to talk about the kit itself. As you can see, it's the Trumpeter Panzerkampfwagen 6 Ausführung E SDKFZ 181 Tiger 1 late production with Zimmerit. That's a right jaw cracker right there. Kit number 09540. So let's take a look at the contents of the box. So obviously we've got the instructions here. First of all, the usual stuff, sprue layout, some nice illustrations here of the finished kit. I'm not going to go into too much detail. They're instructions, and in the instructions you can choose whether you want to do the kit as a vehicle with Zimmerit or without. I'll get more into that later. And there are places where you have two separate bits of instructions showing with the Zimmerit or without, and kind of gives you an idea of what kind of sequence to use. So it just goes right along here like this. So we'll talk more about some of this stuff once we look at the sprues themselves. So that's the instructions. All right, let's take a look at the color schemes and what is available. First off, the color callouts are in AK real colors. So if you're using colors other than that, or a brand other than that, you'll want to, check out the equivalents and pick your paints accordingly. So first we have marking option A, which is tank number A12, 9th Panzer Regiment, Großdeutschland, Romania, East Prussia, summer 1944. That's this one here. Gives the usual both sides, top, front, and back. Then we have B, option B, which is tank number 312, 3 Schwerabteilung, Panzerabteilung 505, Poland, July 1944. This is a brown and Dunkelgelb scheme with some cool markings on it. It's got the charging knight, some bright colors for the marking numbers, so that one's pretty cool. Then we've got option C, which is tank number 912, 9th SS Panzer Regiment, 3rd Totenkopf, Poland, August 1944, which is kind of a tricolor scheme, green, brown, and yellow. Then we have option D, which is tank number 132, commanded by SS, I'm thinking that's Oberscharführer Walter Knecht, 1st Schwer SS Panzerabteilung 102, Cologne area, Germany, September 1944. Another tricolor scheme, which is more green and brown than yellow, so that one's kind of cool looking. And then for the last scheme, scheme E, tank Colmar, 6th French Word Regiment, Trier area, Germany, late 1945. And that's obviously a captured vehicle, painted in olive green, it looks like, or olive drab perhaps. Looks like more like olive green. Nope. Yep. Let's see. RCO 15. Oh man, let me see if I can see what color it is. 023, that would be, yes, olive drab, and it's got French markings on it. So that's a pretty cool looking scheme. So I'll talk about the scheme I'm going to use here in a few minutes. All right, next up, let's take a look at the sprues. So here is Sprue A, which is the hull sides, the front flat part of the horizontal, what would you call it? The horizontal glacis plate. Looks like part of the engine deck maybe. Fenders, the front vertical plate. The exhaust covers and the fenders, other assorted small parts, Pioneer tools, final drives. Okay, next up we have Sprue B, and there are two of these. It's the swing arms for the suspension, toe clevises, lots of small fittings, small parts, wing nuts, looks like grab handles, all kinds of small fittings. I think these are for the exhaust right here. These are the exhaust covers. The mufflers themselves, I should say, and the top part of the muffler there, and then the armored exhaust covers. So there's two of this sprue. Then we have Sprue C, which you know, wire cutters, the light, the machine gun ball mount, the armored visor driver's vision block, the tow cables for both sides, the track cable here that has a little bit of a break, so I'll have to glue that together. I'll have to watch that. Should be easy to fix though. At least all of the sprue gates are on the clamps themselves, so it should make it a little bit easier to cut them off. Let's see, tanker bar or whatever they call it. Let's see, there's an MG34. The turret bin. Now, I've read some stuff about the turret bin being too flat on top, but in looking at the profile, you may not be able to see it on the video there, but it does have a bit of slope to it. As a matter of fact, let's do a little bit of measuring here. That looks like 19 millimeters, not counting the lid because, you know, the lid doesn't go all the way to the back. So let's say 18 millimeters there. Wait, let's see. Yeah, about 18.5 millimeters. And this way, it is about 1 millimeter taller. So I'm thinking the slope's okay. And even if it wasn't, well, it would just have to do because, you know, that's one of those things. So that looks pretty good. More turret parts, etc. Now, the one thing that a lot of people complain about or would complain about is the two-part barrel. Now, normally I would try and get a one-piece aluminum turned barrel, but in searching my usual suspects as far as model parts supplies, nobody has any Tiger 1 barrels right now that I could find. I'm sure there's some somewhere, but there's none at any of the places in the United States I usually go with. And I don't want to order from overseas because who knows how long it would take to get here, and I'm an impatient person. But I will show you that just because it's a two-piece barrel doesn't mean you can't build it and make it look good. That's what I'm going to do with that. Then we have Sprue D, which is the turret ring, the bottom of the turret ring, and then the inside plates for the turret itself. They fit on the inside thusly, and then you have the turret outside. Again, this has some really nice texture to it, rolled armor texture, so if you're doing it without Zimmerit, it'll look really, really good. Very nice texture. There's a couple of seams here that would have to be dealt with, but No big thing. That is Sprue D. And we have Sprue G, and there are two of these, which are the steel-rimmed road wheels, idler wheels, and the drive sprockets. Now, one thing to note here, as far as Tigers go, I've only built two Tigers. Three. Two of them were the same one. But one was the old Tamiya motorized Tiger. And then I did the 1/25th scale Tiger. Both those I did back in the mid-late 80s. And then I built another 1/25th scale Tamiya Tiger in about 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe 4 or 5. It's hard to keep track. But those are the only Tigers I've done, and I've always really liked the steel rimmed Tigers. So this will be pretty cool. This will be a fun one. But two G sprues. We have Sprue H, which is the turret roof. A couple more hull fittings. The rear plate of the hull. Hatches. This would be loader's hatch. The muzzle brake. Parts for the jack. Another axe. More parts for the muzzle brake there. The rear hatch for the turret. And some other small fittings. Again, nice cast texture here. Very, very, very faint texture on this. But the welds are really nice. So that should make for some good weathering. And then the last sprue is J, and that is the mantlet and the pistol ports, the Zimmerited pistol ports for the side if you go with the Zimmerit version. And then finally for the plastic we have the hull and the hull top. So the hull, 1/35th Tiger 1, and a big long number. Very, very, very nice detail. Nice rolled texture and everything, even on the bottom. Looks really good. The sides are smooth, but a part goes on top of that. And yeah, just a lot of really nice simulated rolled steel texture. So that looks pretty good. Top looks good as well. Nice texture on all this here. Smoother texture on the top, which I'm pretty sure is appropriate because the armor plate was thinner on top. But lots of nice details on that. Nice weld seams there, so it should look good once it's all stuck together. So that is that. Okay, the last bit of plastic we've got here is the Zimmerit anti-mine paste. So it's really super thin, which is nice, and it is made out of styrene, which is also really nice. And everything's pre-cut. The only part that, from what I've read, that is not pre-cut is for the rear plate. You have to cut one more hole for this access point right here, and that should not be a problem because I already have a plan. Because since this lines up here and here, what I'll do is I'll make myself a paper template, and through a little bit of trial and error I'll cut it out in a paper template till my paper template fits over here like it's supposed to, and then I'll use that to cut that part out very carefully. So that shouldn't be too big of a deal. But one of the things that people talk about and kind of complain about a bit is the uniformity of the Zimmerit, the columns and the rows. And I guess, yeah, it might be kind of uniform looking, but I think once it's in place, whenever you have something like this rear plate Zimmerit here, once you get it in place and you've got all this other stuff going on, mufflers, exhaust, all these fittings, fenders, and all that kind of stuff, it's going to kind of help break up the uniformity of the Zimmerit. Same with the sides. You know, you've got like the tow ropes on there, all that kind of stuff. So I think myself, I think it's kind of a non-issue. I think it'll be just fine. Now, one thing to note is that it is two-sided. So you want to pay attention to how you're doing this stuff so you have the same side facing out. I don't know how closely these are front to back, but should be just fine. Looks like they're using these as kind of markers because, let's see, this would be the correct way to put it on the turret. So you'd want to make sure you use everything from this side. Now, something else to note, which is kind of cool, if you were to screw something up, you could probably make a new one with the remainder of this Zimmerit here. So, you know, just something to think about. So anyway, that is the Zimmerit. I'm kind of looking forward to using that because I've done Zimmerit before, both putty type and I used the decal type. And I think, and I did one other method that I won't talk about because it's been a long time ago and it's too complicated to discuss, but it's really cool. And I forgot about the tracks almost. These are the tracks. Now I'm going to cut one of these open and take a look, because at cursory glance they look to be really pretty nice. So in looking at him, there are no ejector pin marks, which makes it a lot easier to clean up. Doesn't seem to be any flash. The mold seam lines are minimal at best, and they're inside where you wouldn't see them anyway. So it'd just be a matter of cutting these things off really flush and making sure that they're not rough. Yeah, they look really good. And it's cool because they have the ends of the tracks are hollowed out. So yeah, those are pretty nice looking tracks. And it looks like they go together well. And they may come in handy on a future build. Wait, future build you say? Well, what are you doing? Well, I'll show you. But only after I talk about the decals and the photo etch. So we have the decals here. I'm not going to take them out of the package because I want to keep them protected. But they look to be, well, I better take them out because I want to talk about the, what you call carrier film and all that stuff that's required when doing a kit review. Oh my goodness, they're kind of, oh, there's tape. Tape. So that's kind of cool. I'll cut one side, flap it open, and there we go. So the colors look really good. They look to be in register, and they look to be really thin, which will be really nice. And it should be should fit pretty good on the what you call Zimmerit if I use that. But we'll talk about that later. But they look like nice nice decals. Never built a Trumpeter kit, so we shall see how they work out, but they look good. Then we have the photo etch, which there's not much, don't need much, just the engine deck grill covers. And they're really nice because they're textured, so this weave here looks like it's interwoven like it would be on the real deal. So, looks good. All right, so that's the contents of the box that comes from the factory. Now we need to talk about extras, if any. So first, I want to talk about the extras, and the particular version I'm going to do kind of go hand in hand. But I'll talk about the extras, and then I'll talk about why I have them. So first of all, we've got the Tiger 1 Transport Mode tracks by Ryefield Model. All right, so let's talk about the box. So it looks like the assembly instructions are on the back. 97 pieces, tracks each side. The last track, it shows the 96 track and the last track. They include a little jig, and you can assemble these things to where they're workable. So I'll probably have to be really careful in how I glue them together. And then assembly of the 96th track. Looks like what you do is you cut these pins out, and then you use provided pins to put it together. So yeah, that's pretty cool. First time I've used RFM, so right field model, so it should be good. So let's take a look at the plastic. All right, first up we have the little jig here, which allows you to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tracks. So that's pretty groovy. That will help. And then we have these are the parts that have the I'm not going to open this because they're small parts. Yeah, it's got the extra pins, extra guide horns, and then these parts here, which is what links the parts of the tracks together. So as you can see, they're hollow guide horns. It looks like just one, yeah, there's just one sprue gate, and it's on the side, so it'll just be a matter of, when cutting them from the sprue, just catching on the side like that and just cutting it straight off, and voila, no cleanup there. Doesn't seem to be any flash, so that's good. That little part was loose, so that's kind of weird. But that's Sprue Y, and that's all those pieces. And then a bunch of pins there, which I'm thinking some of those pins might be for the extra tracks. So that is the Sprues Y, and then here are the actual tracks. Now these, yeah, these must be for extra tracks or something. But what's kind of cool here is there are ejector pin marks, but here, let me crack one of these things open so you can see what's going on. Okay, so there are ejector pin marks, but they are on the inner part. Wow, that's my cat. She's just being freaky. Looks like they're on the inside to be covered up by that one put. Yeah, look. Yeah, right here. Where this part, that little part, covers the ejector pin marks. So no ejector pin marks to clean up. The ends here, the detail is really nice. The track pins, one side flat, one side slotted. There's even little, looks like foundry marks inside. Really nice. So I think these are going to work out pretty dandy. So that is the tracks I'm going to be using. Now the only other aftermarket stuff that might make its way on here is a covered muzzle and a covered bow machine gun. But I'll talk about that more in just a minute. As for what products I'm using, it's the usual suspects. We've got your Tamiya Extra Thin. I've got Model Master Liquid Cement, which is a little bit thicker than Tamiya Extra Thin. And I think it's the equivalent for our European friends, or the people who can get it, the Revell Contacta that has like the little needle applicator. I think it's about the same viscosity, it looks like. I've got various super glues. I've got the gel, I've got the thin, and I've got the black slow dry by Ammo by MIG. So got all that stuff ready to roll. And then, you know, the Ultimate cutters, X-Acto knife, tweezers. Got the handy dandy scalpel here for if I have to clean any curved areas. Just, you know, the usual stuff. I'm not going to go through all of it because I tend to use all kinds of different tools at a given time. I will be using a circle cutter to cut no, I won't need them actually on this one because there's no rubber for the road wheels. That is awesome opossum. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the tools I'm going to be using. As far as supplies themselves, for my paint, let's see, let's talk primer first. For primer, I will be using, not out of the big bottle, I've got a small bottle of it. Actually, this is Ammo One Shot, which is the same stuff as Stynylrez, but I am using the appropriate oxide primer, since that's what the German vehicles had on them. So I'll be using that for my primer. And then for my paints, I will be using Vallejo Model Air. Yes, Vallejo Model Air. Some of you may be thinking, what are you doing? Well, I'm really trying to change over from more solvent-based paints, or at least the harsher acrylics like Tamiya and or Mr. Hobby Aqueous. The thinners for those just seem to be a little more irritating to the respiratory system they used to be. So I want to really start switching over to water-based acrylics. So I'm going to give the Model Air, Vallejo Model Air, another shot. But I have some tricks that I've learned about recently that I'll talk about later that should make it okay. So those are the paints I'm going to use. And then for any brush painting, I will be using the same brand as well as the Vallejo Model Color for brush painting. Then for decals, I will be using Micro Set to put the decals in place, and Solvaset to get them to snuggle down into the details. So that is the products that I'm going to be using for the most part. Then last but not least, I will be using these two airbrushes for the work. I'll be using my single action Iwata HPM2, which has a 0.35 nozzle on it. I'll be using this for the main color schemes, but I'll be using this to spray the primer, which is my Iwata Revolution SAR. It is a 0.4 nozzle, I believe, single action. Hook the bottle on the bottom, it's siphon feed, and it's great for, no, actually I think this is 0.5 needle. It's great for doing heavy fluids like primers. It's also good for clears and stuff like that, but this is primarily what I use for primers, so that's what I'll be using for that. Then for the solid colors, I'll be using, actually for the base color, I'll be using this, which is the HPM2. Then for my camouflage, I'll be using the TRN1, which is Neo for Iwata. And the reason I'll be using this one is it's a double action, and I have really good control with the trigger because I can't seem to use regular double action airbrushes that well, so I'll be using this to spray my camouflage pattern. So that will conclude all of the tools and supplies. As for the plan for this vehicle, I am doing option A, which is tank A12. And the reason I chose this one is because I'm going to be building it in transportation mode. There are reference photos of this vehicle in its transportation mode configuration. That's why I went with the transport tracks. Transport tracks are only as wide as the drive sprockets. They don't extend beyond for better traction, better ground pressure to keep from sinking into soft soil or fields or whatever. So because of that, and according to the photos, there are no side skirts, and the mud flaps front and rear that are hinged right here are flipped up. So I'm going to have to modify these, so that will be fun, a little bit of a challenge. So flipped up mud flaps and no side skirts. The only other thing that would make it a little bit different than most is in the photos, the muzzle on the main gun and the ball mount machine gun are both covered. So my options are to buy a resin piece that simulates a covered muzzle and scratch make something for the ball mount machine gun, because even though there are some of those available, can't seem to find them anywhere. So I'll either have to scratch them or just leave them uncovered. So I haven't determined what I'm going to do yet. I'll experiment with a little bit, and if I can pull it off, that's what I'm going to do. I'll scratch build them. So that's the plan. Vehicle A12 of 9th Panzer Regiment, Großdeutschland, Romania, East Prussia, summer of 1944. So there you go, folks. That is the plan for the next project, the 135th scale Trumpeter Tiger 1 late production with Zimmerit. So if anybody has any experience with this kit or one very similar to it, please say so down in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the kit if you built it. If you have any other hints, tips, questions, concerns, any of that kind of stuff, put them in the comments section down below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So until part 2, where I actually start construction, I will see you all later.